Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the enchanting island of St. Kitts in the Caribbean. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The cruise ship had docked early that morning, and Lyla stood at Port Zante, feeling the warm Caribbean air settle around her like a gentle embrace. January here meant sunshine, without the fierce heat of summer, a steady breeze coming off the water, and skies so blue they almost didn't seem real. She adjusted her sunglasses and looked around the port, taking in the colorful buildings, the palm trees swaying overhead, and the easy rhythm of people moving through the terminal. She spotted Sadie before her friends saw her, waving from beside a white convertible, her dark curls pulled back with a bright turquoise scarf, sunglasses perched on her head. Sadie had moved to St. Kitts 3 years ago, trading her office job in the city for a life of warmth, simplicity, and what she called island time. They'd been friends since college, and though they didn't see each other often anymore, their connection had remained easy and genuine. "Lyla!" Sadie called out, her face breaking into a wide smile as she hurried over for a hug. "You made it! How was the cruise?" "Wonderful," Lyla said, returning the embrace. "But I've been looking forward to today most of all. A whole day with you." "And I'm going to show you everything," Sadie said, linking her arm through Lyla's and leading her toward the car. "Well, as much as we can fit in anyway. The island's small, but there's more to see than you'd think." They loaded Lyla's small day bag into the back seat, and soon they were pulling out of the port, the wind whipping through their hair as Sadie navigated the roads with the confidence of someone who knew every curve and turn. The convertible top was down, and Lyla felt an immediate sense of freedom, of adventure, as they left the busier area of the port behind. "First stop is Romney Manor," Sadie said, raising her voice slightly over the wind. "It's up in the hills, beautiful gardens, and they make batik fabric there. You'll love it." The road began to climb, winding through lush greenery. Lyla watched as they passed small houses painted in cheerful colors: coral pink, sunshine yellow, mint green, each one with its own personality. Gardens overflowed with tropical plants she couldn't name, bursts of red and orange flowers against the deep green foliage. Chickens wandered freely along the roadside, and once a goat looked up from its grazing to watch them pass. The air smelled different here, away from the sea. It was richer, earthier, with hints of blooming flowers and the green smell of growing things. Sadie pointed out landmarks as they drove: a small church with a bell tower, a roadside stand selling fresh fruit, a view of the ocean glittering far below. Romney Manor appeared around a bend, a gracious old estate surrounded by gardens. Sadie pulled into the parking area, and they stepped out into the shade of enormous trees. The grounds were stunning: manicured lawns, towering palms, and flowering bushes in every direction. At the center stood a massive tree, its trunk thick and gnarled, its branches spreading wide overhead. "That's a salmon tree," Sadie said, gesturing toward it. "It's over 350 years old." People say it's one of the oldest trees on the island. They walked closer, and Lyla tilted her head back to take in the full span of it. The tree seemed almost ancient and wise, its roots diving deep into the earth, its canopy providing shade for half the garden. Birds flitted among its branches, their songs bright and quick. The Caravelle Batik workshop was housed in a building nearby, and they wandered inside to watch artisans at work. Long tables were covered with white fabric stretched taut, and artists carefully applied hot wax in intricate patterns before dyeing the cloth in vibrant colors. Deep blues, sunset oranges, ocean greens. The process was mesmerizing, each piece unique, each one requiring patience and precision. "I bought a scarf here when I first moved," Sadie said, browsing the finished pieces hanging on display. "I wear it all the time. The colors never fade." Lyla ran her fingers over a piece of fabric, admiring the swirling patterns, the way the colors seemed to flow into one another. She selected a small wall hanging with a design of sea turtles and waves, thinking it would be a perfect reminder of this day. They wandered the gardens for a while longer, taking their time. The air was warm but not oppressive, the breeze keeping everything pleasant. Lyla noticed how relaxed Sadie seemed, how different from the slightly harried person she'd been back in Boston. Island life suited her. Back in the car, they continued up into the hills, the road narrowing as they climbed. Sadie explained they were heading to Wingfield Estate, the ruins of an old sugar plantation. The landscape grew wilder here, the vegetation thick and tangled, vines climbing over stone walls and abandoned structures. Wingfield Estate revealed itself gradually, crumbling stone buildings overtaken by jungle, old machinery rusting quietly among the trees. There was something hauntingly beautiful about it, the way nature was slowly reclaiming what had once been a bustling plantation. They walked along a path that led past the remains of a rum distillery, the massive stone walls still standing, open to the sky. "It's from the 1600s, Sadie said, her voice quieter now, as though the place deserved a certain reverence. "Sugar and rum were everything here for a long time. It's a complicated history." Lyla nodded, feeling the weight of it. The beauty of the ruins couldn't be separated from the history they represented. They walked in silence for a bit, taking in the contrast between the peaceful present and the difficult past. A small stream ran through the estate, and they followed it for a while, listening to the water tumble over rocks. Tropical birds called from the trees, their songs unfamiliar but lovely. The jungle here felt alive, vibrant, reclaiming everything with patient determination. Eventually, they made their way back to the car and continued their journey. The next stop was Brimstone Hill Fortress, perched high on a hilltop with commanding views of the island and the sea beyond. The fortress was massive, built from dark volcanic stone, its walls thick and imposing. "This is one of the best preserved fortresses in the Caribbean," Sadie said, as they began to climb the stone steps leading up to the main structure. "The British built it over 100 years. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now." The climb was gradual, and Lyla took her time, pausing to catch her breath and take in the views. The fortress commanded an incredible vantage point. She could see the coastline stretching out in both directions. The ocean, a brilliant blue, the island of St. Eustatius visible in the distance. At the top, the wind was stronger, whipping around the old stone walls. They explored the various levels of the fortress, walking through rooms that had once housed soldiers, peering through cannon ports that looked out over the sea. Information plaques told the story of battles fought here, of sieges and surrenders, of the fortress changing hands between European powers. But despite the military history, the fortress felt peaceful now. Tourists wandered quietly, taking photos, reading the historical markers. A family sat on a wall, sharing snacks and pointing out ships on the horizon. Lizards sunned themselves on the warm stones, quick and unbothered by the human visitors. "The view alone is worth the climb," Lyla said, standing at the highest point and looking out over the island. From here, she could see the green hills rolling down to the sea, the patchwork of villages and farms, the ribbon of road they'd driven up. "Wait until you see the view from Timothy Hill," Sadie said with a knowing smile. "That's later, though. Come on, I want to show you the black rocks before we head up the east coast." They descended from the fortress and drove north, the road hugging the coastline now. The landscape changed as they went, becoming more dramatic, more rugged. And then they rounded a bend, and Lyla gasped. The black rocks stretched along the shore, massive formations of volcanic rock, dark and jagged, shaped by centuries of waves and wind. The ocean crashed against them, sending up spray that caught the sunlight and created momentary rainbows. The rocks looked almost otherworldly, like something from another planet, their surfaces rough and pitted, their forms twisted into abstract shapes. "This is Beltet," Sadie said, pulling over so they could get out and walk closer. The lava flowed all the way to the ocean when the volcano erupted. "These rocks are all that's left of that flow." They walked carefully along the rocky shore, the sound of the waves constant and powerful. The rocks were warm under Lila's hands when she reached out to steady herself, heated by the sun. Tide pools nestled in the crevices, small ecosystems teeming with tiny fish and sea anemones. The force of the ocean was mesmerizing here, relentless and ancient. Each wave hit the rocks with a crash that Lyla could feel in her chest, and the spray carried on the wind, cool and salt-sharp. She could have stayed here for hours, just watching the water, feeling the power of it. But Sadie gently tugged her back toward the car. "We've got more to see," she said. "And trust me, you don't want to miss the East Coast Drive." They continued north, the road taking them through small villages that felt untouched by tourism. Dieppe Bay was a sleepy collection of houses clustered near a black sand beach. Fishing boats pulled up on the shore, nets spread out to dry. A few local men sat in the shade, talking and laughing, barely glancing at the car as it passed. Chickens scratched in the dirt, and a dog stretched lazily in a sunny spot. Sadler's was similar, quiet, unhurried, with a small church and a handful of shops. Children played in a yard, their voices carrying on the breeze. An older woman swept her front steps, pausing to wave as they drove by. Sadie waved back, calling out a greeting. "Do you know her?" Lyla asked. "Not really," Sadie said with a laugh, "but that's how it is here. Everyone waves, everyone says hello. It took me a while to get used to it, coming from Boston. But now I love it." The East Coast Drive was everything Sadie had promised. The road wound along the coastline, sometimes climbing high on cliffs, sometimes dropping down near the water. The Atlantic side of the island was wilder than the Caribbean side, the waves bigger, the wind stronger. The coastline was dramatic, rocky cliffs, hidden coves, stretches of beach with powerful surf. They drove slowly, stopping often to take in the views. At one overlook, they could see waves breaking against rocks far below, the water a deep, almost navy blue. At another, a small waterfall tumbled down the cliff face, disappearing into the foliage before reaching the sea. "People don't come to this side as much," Sadie said. "It's too rough for swimming in most places, but I think it's the most beautiful part of the island." Lyla agreed. There was something raw and honest about this coastline, something that felt more real than the carefully maintained beaches and resorts. The wind whipped through the car and Lyla breathed deeply, tasting salt and freedom. Timothy Hill Overlook took her breath away. They pulled into a small parking area, and when they got out and walked to the viewing point, Lyla understood why Sadie had been so eager to bring her here. On one side, the Atlantic Ocean stretched out, wild and blue. On the other side, the Caribbean Sea lay calm and turquoise, and between them, a narrow strip of land connected the two, creating one of the most stunning views Lyla had ever seen. "This is where the island almost splits in two," Sadie explained, standing beside her. "You're looking at both sides of the island at once. It's pretty incredible, right?" "It's perfect," Lyla said softly. They stood there for a long time, not talking, just taking it in. Other tourists came and went, snapping photos, exclaiming over the view. But Lyla barely noticed them. She was focused on the sweep of the coastline, the contrast between the two bodies of water, the way the island curved and stretched toward the horizon. Eventually, reluctantly, they returned to the car. "Ready for lunch?" Sadie asked. "I'm taking you to my favorite spot, South Friars Bay. We can eat right on the beach." The drive down to the southern part of the island felt like descending into a different world. The landscape softened, the villages became more frequent, and soon they were pulling into a small parking area near the beach. South Friars Bay was everything a Caribbean beach should be: a long curve of golden sand, calm turquoise water, palm trees leaning at lazy angles, and a handful of beach bars and restaurants with open-air seating. The beach wasn't crowded, just a comfortable scattering of people, some swimming, some lounging in beach chairs, some playing volleyball near the water's edge. Sadie led Lyla to a beach bar with tables right in the sand, shaded by a thatched roof. Reggae music played softly from speakers, and the smell of grilled fish and jerk chicken drifted from the kitchen. They settled into chairs, slipping off their sandals and digging their toes into the warm sand. A waiter approached with a friendly smile, his dreadlocks tied back with a colorful band. "Ladies, what can I get for you today?" he asked, his accent musical and relaxed. "I'll have the grilled mahi-mahi with rice and peas," Sadie said, "and a passion fruit juice." "Same for me," Lyla added. "That sounds perfect." "Coming right up, you visiting?" he asked Lyla. "Just for the day. My friend here is showing me around." "Well, you picked a good guide," he said, grinning at Sadie. "And a good day. Enjoy the beach, ladies." While they waited for their food, Lyla and Sadie caught up properly. talking about Sadie's life on the island, her job managing a small hotel, the friends she'd made, the way her days had a different rhythm now. She woke with the sun, swam in the ocean most mornings, spent her evenings watching sunsets instead of sitting in traffic. "Do you ever miss home?" Lyla asked. Sadie considered this, looking out at the water. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I miss certain things, my comfort food, autumn leaves, being able to see my family easily. But this," she gestured at the beach, the water, the easy atmosphere around them. "This feels like the life I was supposed to be living all along. It's simpler, but in a good way. Honestly, I think this is my home now. Does that make sense?" "It does," Lyla said. "You seem happy, really happy." "I am," Sadie said simply. Their food arrived, and it was delicious. The fish perfectly grilled, flaky and tender, seasoned with herbs and a hint of citrus. The rice and peas were rich and flavorful, and the passion fruit juice was sweet tart and refreshing. They ate slowly, savoring every bite, in no hurry at all. After lunch, they walked along the beach barefoot, the water lapping at their ankles. The sand was soft and warm, and the water was the perfect temperature. Not cold, not bathwater warm, just right. Small waves rolled in gently, and Lyla could see her feet clearly through the crystalline water. In the distance, across the narrow channel, the island of Nevis rose up, green and mountainous, partially shrouded in clouds. Sadie pointed it out, explaining that on a clear day you could see it perfectly, that people took ferries back and forth, that the two islands were sister islands, forever connected. They found a spot in the shade of a palm tree and sat down, watching the water, watching the few boats bobbing at anchor offshore, watching the light play on the surface of the sea. Time seemed to slow down here, to stretch and soften. There was nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. A small boy ran past, chasing a beach ball, his laughter bright and unself-conscious. A couple walked hand in hand along the water's edge. A man with a guitar sat under a nearby tree, playing softly, the music blending with the sound of the waves. "Should we check out Cockleshell Beach too?" Sadie asked after a while. "It's just a bit further down. It's a little livelier, more beach bars, usually has more of a party vibe. But it's also got a great view of Nevis." "Sure," Lyla said. "I'm up for it." They drove the short distance to Cockleshell Beach, and Sadie was right. It had a different energy. The beach was busier here, with several colourful beach bars playing music, people dancing in the sand, volleyball games in full swing. But it was still relaxed, still welcoming, the kind of place where everyone seemed to be having a good time, without any pretension. They walked along the beach, taking in the scene. One bar had strings of lights already hung, ready for evening, and tables decorated with bright tablecloths. Another had hammocks strung between palm trees, people swaying gently in the breeze, drinks in hand. The view of Nevis from here was spectacular, the island rising up across the channel, its peak often hidden in clouds, its slopes lush and green. Sailboats dotted the water between the two islands, their white sails bright against the blue. "This is where people come for sunset," Sadie said. "It gets pretty magical, the light reflecting off the water, Nevis in the background." But we should probably start heading back soon if you need to make it to your ship on time." Lyla nodded, feeling a small pang of regret that the day was coming to an end. But it had been perfect, truly perfect, and she didn't want to overstay and risk missing the ship's departure. They got back in the car and began the drive back toward the port. The route took them along Frigate Bay Strip, a more developed area with hotels and restaurants and a different kind of beach. Wider, with more amenities, more people. But even here, the beauty of the island shone through. The water was still that impossible blue, the sand still golden, the palm trees still swaying. As they drove, the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the light turning warmer, softer. Shadows grew longer, and the colors of everything, the plants, the buildings, the water, seemed to deepen and glow. "Thank you for today," Lyla said, reaching over to squeeze Sadie's hand. "This was exactly what I needed." "Me too," Sadie said, smiling. "I love showing people around, but it's different when it's someone who really gets it, you know? Someone who appreciates the little things." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the wind gentler now, as the day began to cool. The road curved along the coast, offering glimpses of the sea between buildings and trees. The sky was starting to take on hints of pink and orange, the promise of a beautiful sunset beginning to unfold. By the time they reached Port Zante, the port was bustling with returning cruise passengers, everyone carrying shopping bags and looking pleasantly tired. Sadie pulled up near the terminal and turned off the engine. "I'm not going to drag out the goodbye," she said, her eyes a little bright. "But please come back. Come for longer next time. Stay with me. I've got a guest room with your name on it." "I will," Lyla promised, hugging her tightly. "I absolutely will." She gathered her bag and the batik wall hanging she'd bought, taking one last look at her friend in the convertible, at the palm trees swaying overhead, at the blue sky and the warm evening air. As she walked toward the ship, she turned back once to wave. Sadie was still there, leaning against her car, waving back with a big smile. And then Lyla was joining the flow of passengers boarding, showing her card, climbing the gangway. She found a spot on the deck as the ship prepared to depart, watching as the island began to slowly recede. She could see the whole sweep of the coastline from here. The port, the green hills rising behind it, the way the island stretched north and south, that impossible mix of lush vegetation and volcanic rock, and perfect beaches. The ship's horn sounded, low and resonant, and they began to move. Lyla stayed on the deck, watching St. Kitts grow smaller, the details fading but the overall shape remaining clear. She thought about the day, the gardens at Romney Manor, the ancient fortress, the dramatic black rocks, the wild beauty of the East Coast, the perfect simplicity of lunch on the beach. And Sadie, happy, relaxed Sadie, who had found her place in the world. The sun was setting properly now, the sky ablaze with color, deep orange, soft pink, streaks of purple. The water reflected it all, turning the sea into liquid gold. Other passengers had gathered on the deck to watch, but no one spoke much. They just watched, together, as the sun touched the horizon. Lyla stayed until the island was just a dark shape in the distance, the lights beginning to twinkle on as night fell. The air was cooling, the breeze picking up as the ship moved through the open water. The sky was deepening, stars beginning to appear. She thought about island time, about slowing down, about choosing a life that felt right rather than a life that looked right. She thought about old trees and ancient fortresses, about volcanic rocks and turquoise water, about the way the ocean could be wild on one coast and calm on another. The day settled into her, becoming part of her collection of perfect days, of moments when everything aligned just right. A day with an old friend on a beautiful island, with no agenda except to see and feel and be present. The ship continued south, steady and sure, carrying her toward the next port, the next adventure. But for now, Lyla remained on deck, watching the last light fade from the sky, feeling the warm glow of St. Kitts, grateful for a day of sunshine and friendship and Caribbean beauty.